Welcome to the SkillTorch Disrupt Podcast, where we dive into the world of innovation and technology. I'm your host, Melica Moshiri, and the founder of SkillTorch, which is a recruitment company in the digital and tech industries across the globe. Today, I have with me my special guest, Fabian, who is the co-founder at EarlyGamers. He is working in the gaming industry, and he's actually based in Germany. He's going to actually be diving in deep into the topic of organic growth in the gaming space. So discussing things around mergers and acquisitions, and also why companies should hire gamers. So Fabian, I'll give the floor to you. It would be great if you can introduce the audience about yourself, your background, what you do as a company, and then just go from there. Thank you.
Perfect. First of all, thanks very much, Melica, for having me. It's an honor. Well, first a few words about myself. So Fabian, co-founder of EarlyGame. We are two founders at EarlyGame, one being me and the other one being Leopold. 34 years old now. I used to be a somewhat semi-professional gamer back in the days when I was really young, so not studying too much, but rather focusing on gaming. Managed to still get my A-levels, went to uni, studied business, then went on in a strategy consulting firm, but always had the passion to create my own venture. And after a few, couple of months and years at strategy consulting firm and another esports firm, I finally decided let's go back to being an entrepreneur. And luckily at that same time, Leopold, who I met at the strategy consulting firm, also decided to create his own venture. And, we kind of looked at a few different industries back then when we, being a founder, a strategy, consultant, you always analyze too much before you actually move on. So we analyzed a few industries, be it the health tech industry, AI, gaming, in terms of different KPIs and variables. But in the end, our passion was in gaming. We already had a few contacts there. So the decision was quite simple. And then EarlyGame was born. Yeah, that was somewhere in late 2019. What is EarlyGame? In the end, we are building a network of editorial websites, content websites, social media brands in gaming, in esports, and in entertainment. Or in other words, we always said, let's create the ESPN for esports, good videos, good articles, good and great journalism, then that attracts a lot of visitors, a lot of readers on your website. And here we are 3 years later. In terms of development, we are, I would say, right now at roughly 50 million reach on a monthly basis. So quite happy having a great team, and still having fun day in and day out.
Amazing reach of audience you've got there. How did you manage to get to 50 million? That's a lot, especially since starting out just before the pandemic as well.
You mentioned it, the pandemic, of course, helped somewhat. But we still grew much faster than, let's say, on average as other competitors. I would say first and foremost, it's hard work. It's hard work by not only me and my co-founder, but also the great team that we, were luckily able to onboard over the last 3.5 years. So one is the passion aspect, and also the hard work. And then, given that both me and my co-founder are, very analytical driven, being a strategy consultant, studied business and finance back then, I guess that is one of the major reasons why we are at 50 million reach on a monthly basis now, because we don't do too many decisions just based on gut feeling. We always, try to get numbers behind our reasonings, and not only on a strategic level, but also on operational level. So this is something that we also learned the hard way, because in the beginning, the growth was quite slow, since we said, we know the games we're talking about, so we know exactly what users will be interested to read. But an individual perspective never, or usually, is not the perspective of what the majority of people are interested in. And once we changed that, introduced the KPI driven methods into our daily editorial calls, into our daily decision making, here the growth started. And then, of course, I mean, there are many other reasons. There are good SEO work, so know where to place the keywords. But nonetheless, yeah, team and hard work are probably the most critical aspects here.
Yeah, fantastic yield of results you got there. Just so I'm clear about your company, who are you actually partnering with exactly? Are you actually partnering with gaming studios, or are you actually partnering with the end user?
That's a good question. Yeah. So when I talk about partners, you can look at it from two different perspectives, I would say, or maybe three. You mentioned the users. So in the end, we create content for the users. Is it a video? Is it an article? Is it a social media or Instagram post or a YouTube video? So we always want to create content that, as I mentioned beforehand, is a topic the user is interested in, and that is based on KPI and analytics, but also is fun and enjoyable for the user. Yeah, that is one customer, I would say, one partner. The second one are, of course, our investors. We managed to get Kicker, Germany's largest sports publisher, as an investor early on, already in 2019.
Oh, fantastic.
Just a few months after we launched the company. Since then, they have reinvested 3 times. Given our numbers aren't too bad, they were quite happy to reinvest, and we were also happy to still have them on board. So of course you have this constant partner and constant partner and investor that you challenge yourself with in strategic meetings on a semi-annual basis. And the last aspect in terms of partners, you always have to think about monetization, of course, especially now looking at the not too easy macroeconomic environment for startups. So we're always on the hunt for good partnerships. Yeah, we're working with brands, let's say Razer, ESL, HyperX from the gaming space, that try to reach our audience, as I said, the 50 million via different means. Again, social media, editorial websites, etc. And here we create different activations, different sponsorship opportunities. So the customers get a good feeling on the products, on the offerings from our partners in this sense. Yeah. So that's how I would probably see our different angles in terms of partnerships.
That's fantastic. What the investor that's regularly investing in your company, what is it that he sees? What is it that they see in EarlyGame to, what is it that they want to receive out of their investment? What have they seen in terms of an opportunity there for them?
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned a couple of times already the word luck. So luck, of course, also plays an important role wherever you go. Yeah. There are many phrases that, hard work leads to luck. Yeah. So that could also be the case why we have so much luck. But we must say that the first investment came in 2019. And during that time, Kicker, the sports publisher, was anyways thinking about diversifying in terms of sports publishing, so
Right.
editorial work, from traditional sports to esports. Yeah, so they were already looking into the field, and just closed another deal in another esports company that didn't make it. Yeah, but still they were investing in esports and wanted to diversify further. And we just sent them a message or called them. I don't quite remember, but it was really cold calling. Yeah, we said, hey, dear friends at Kicker, we are a esports agency. Yeah, we weren't really a website yet, so we are an agency. You so far only have content about Formula One, golf, football, first and foremost. You should also look into esports. And since you most likely don't have the talent in-house, we will produce the content for you. And then we put a margin on top. Yeah, this is, typical agency work. Then we had a meeting with them. It's 2 hours away from Munich, where we are centered. We drove there, and then we finally realized and discussed it with the colleagues at Kicker. Why not build an own website? Yeah, why should we as Kicker have an agency deliver us content? Why aren't you guys just producing or creating your own brand? Yeah, and I was, before I created this company, I was working for another esports website, so I had a bit of knowledge in that field. Right. And then Kicker made their first investment into us, and I mean, as an investor, you're always looking for a return. Yeah, so that is clear. And a return based on a business that is similar to their business. Yeah, it's not traditional sports, it's esports, it's gaming, but it's still editorial and content work, and this is where they come from. So there's, of course, lots of knowledge in terms of monetization, in terms of setting up a journalistic team, etc., etc. But in the end, it boils down, as for every investor, they are not just investing for the sake of investing or for fun of enjoying, gaming, but they want to make a return out of it.
That's fantastic. I mean, I like the fact that you actually all proactively cold called and did like your sales pitch to get this investor on board. So no, amazing work. And, you're operating in a quite lucrative market as well. Just talking about investment now, I think it'd be great to sort of look into mergers and acquisitions, because, what I'm seeing in recent months, or maybe in the last couple of years, we're seeing a lot more M&As happening in the gaming space. We're even seeing it gaming with relation to advertising technology as well, in-game advertising. I mean, could you maybe share some recent examples of that, of where you've actually seen it and the implications it's actually having in the gaming industry?
I mean, the M&A business is also something that we internally at EarlyGame thought of, a faster route to success, or let's say at least a faster route to building up revenues. We haven't done it yet, so everything we do so far is purely organic. Nonetheless, the market is very dynamic and driven by lots of M&A opportunities. A few companies to name here are Enthusiast Gaming, they are publicly listed. You have Gamours from Australia, and you also have a few others. Yeah, so those are the major players in the market. And I can tell from the outside whether it's successful or not, but there are a few reasons why you can or should look into it as an editorial player in the market. Yeah, first of all, it's shrinking RPMs or CPMs depending where you look. So if your RPMs or the way you make money are decreasing, then of course increasing your reach is important to balance out the loss that you make per 1,000 users. Yeah? So that is one way why you should do it. Another one that is quite obvious, if you look into any M&A activities, you have lots of financial and efficiency levers. Yeah, I mean, if we would now buy another company that pretty surely has an HR team, they have an accounting and finance team, they have a sales team, but those are overhead functions that you most likely only need once in your entity, so you can take out some costs. Another aspect that is important, looking, as I mentioned, the RPMs are decreasing, is maybe adding a few revenue streams that are somewhat independent or new to your existing business. So you're based on advertising mostly, but if you, for example, buy an editorial website, or just a website in general that has a subscription model that is working, you of course diversify your revenue streams, and you might even implement that functioning subscription model at the target to your existing entities, and suddenly open up a new revenue stream that is diversified, and that comes hand in hand with subscription companies being, higher valued or have bigger multiples than if it's just a typical outlet that is based on reach. Another one, I mean, a reason that we can forecast our business case pretty clearly over the next couple of years, because we exactly know the costs more or less, but we also know how much money we make out of one user or out of 1,000 users. So if you're making, let's say, $10 out of 1,000 users, and a potential target is making $8, with similar content, but then you buy them or acquire them, and you suddenly, add your revenue streams, then you directly have a top line potential of, let's say, a bit above 20%. That's another reason, and an important one, especially, in esports and gaming, the market was really hyped 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah, lots of money went in, lots of promises were made, and now we all see the valuations and the market decreasing, at least at some assets. But the business cases are still out there. Companies still got their investments, they still got their loans, and now you have to deliver. Yeah, you promised some revenues, you cannot do it on your own organically, and now suddenly you need to buy it. Yeah. And finally, I mean, everybody maybe wants to have a bigger company, more people to lead, more revenues, more EBITDA. So greed, and I would say also plays a role. Yeah. But from the outside, it's difficult to say whether the companies that I just mentioned are actually doing a good job or a bad job. For us, until this very moment, we have decided to rather put it on a solid basis, instead of going crazy and going wild and then taking the lucky shot. Yeah, but maybe that is also too German. Yeah, Germans rather tend to be too conservative. Yeah.
That's fair enough. So you mentioned obviously a couple of advantages there, mainly around sort of revenue and cost in terms of like staying and focusing on organic growth. What are the sort of challenges you're seeing though in terms of focusing on organic growth rather than actually really focusing on the M&A market?
I mean, the advantage is, of course, if you don't have that many investors, you don't have that big
That
of
much pressure.
loans, that much pressure. I mean, there's still pressure, for the people that you have internally, and there's still pressure for growth, but maybe not, that high of pressure, and maybe you don't have that many loans or, shareholders. I mean, Enthusiast Gaming was doing a couple of stock raises and collecting more money and diluting existing shareholders, as far as I know. And that, of course, isn't a good sign. Yeah. And there's also a limit to it. And as owners of the company, me and Leopold are still major shareholders, majority shareholders. And as soon as you collect more money, of course, you dilute. And we want to have, the final decision on whatever we do here at EarlyGame. So our strategy so far is really, rather growing a bit slower, but owning the company and always saying where we had to. Yeah. Disadvantages, I mean, are clear. I just mentioned you could potentially beef up your margins because you get additional revenue, you take out cost. I mean, personally, it's of course more exciting maybe to, run a company with 100 people than, run a company with 40 people. And speed, yeah, I mean, everything takes longer. Building up 50 million organically or inorganically, there's a speed difference. Yeah.
But you've done it, and it sounds like you've all done a great job in having that huge reach in just such a short space of time.
I mean, we are happy. Yeah? We still walk into the office every day. We see smiling faces, but of course we
nice. That's good.
A bit more of gray hair, looking a couple of years older. We're still having fun, and I guess that's the most important part: fun and fighting our way to becoming a successful company. I mean, we are not I don't know what the English word or the English saying is, but we're not above the mountain yet. So we are not 100% safe yet. Yeah. I mean, what company is 100% safe?
Above the water.
Yeah, above the water, exactly. So we're still making our way to sustainable profitability, which is especially important in a market that sees a drain of investment funding. Yeah, and quite fortunately, we early on also put a focus on revenues and cost, and not only on building a massive reach. And that was before the recent crisis hit. Yeah, first COVID, and now the macroeconomic crisis. So again, luck a bit here. Yeah, but also I would say somewhat wise decision making from us as a team.
Yeah, it sounds like it. In your view, what are the sort of critical factors that needs to be considered before gaming or esports company, goes down the M&A route in that space?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I can only look at it from the gaming and esports environment that I'm in. We are not a publisher, nor are we a merchandising company in the esports and gaming world, nor do we have an own esports team. So they all have the different variables that they should be looking at. Most likely, I can only talk about it from an editorial media perspective. And here, of course, the question is, first of all, do you have a team that, can handle it? Is your I mean, don't underestimate integrating, other companies from a cultural perspective, from a tech perspective, from a content perspective. Do you have, the leeway for failure, financially? If it doesn't work out, if you do a business case and you estimate that you will add 20% in, top line, what if only 10% are, coming in? So a proper business case with different scenarios are important. And then you have to ask yourself, as I mentioned, do you want to hand over shares to more shareholders to be able to acquire companies? Or do you rather want to keep a majority of your own company and then, take it from there, as it might be a bit slower? And in the end, I mean, a good due diligence process is important. I mean, you need to look at the company that you potentially would like to acquire. I mean, we get a couple of offers here and there from, M&A brokers that offer us different targets to acquire. Some of them were interesting for us. Some others were not. And I mean, just look at the game that they are talking about, or the games that they're talking about. If they talk about a game that is not as interesting anymore down the road, I don't know, FIFA, for example, now changing the traditional FIFA game to EAFC. I don't know what's going to happen. And if you buy a company that so far has only based their editorial work on FIFA, the question is, will they survive? Or are you buying? I mean, we are only talking about gaming, so League of Legends, Counter-Strike, Call of Duty, etc. One way for us to diversify, but also, taking up a risk, would be to invest into a media company that focuses on movies or anime. But we are not as knowledgeable about, those titles than we are, about the topics that we write about. So, look at the risks. That is important. And in the end, and as I mentioned, an important factor for our success is the fun on a daily basis. So if you acquire that company, are you still having fun when you walk in on the next day?
Okay, really interesting insight that you've just given there. And there was a couple of things you mentioned there that I also, didn't really, really wasn't aware of. So yeah, really good insight there. Thank you for that. And moving to the topic around hiring in the industry. So as you know, I own a recruitment company. I'm working with quite a few gaming studios right now. There seems to be a huge appetite for hiring gaming talents, despite the macroeconomics. It seems that a lot of companies are hiring like C++ engineers, Unity developers, economy game designers, directors. What sort of unique skills and qualities, do you feel like gamers bring to the table, in not even just gaming, but even just outside of that as well? Because it seems to be a very specific talent that they have.
I mean, they got many talents because gaming, shapes the character. So, I mean, to name a few characteristics that gamers, I would say, stereotypically have. Not saying that non-gamers do not have it. First of all, teamwork. You typically, if you play games, you play in a team, you play in a clan, you typically play with a few other people, or you play against a few other people, a few other gamers. And these team members are usually very diverse, not only in terms of gender, but also in terms of culture, in terms of age. So you early on, you learn to interact in a team. And now I mentioned, gender, I mentioned age. Another one is this rather speaks for the German market, but you early on start speaking English and other languages. So you're quite familiar with English, although let's say you grew up in Germany. That is helpful in a global market. Another one is learning how to deal with a failure. I mean, you typically, let's say you win 50% of the time and you lose 50% of the time. But I mean, you also have that in other sports. Let's say you play football or soccer or whatever it is. So learning how to cope with failure is an important one, and gamers are used to it. Another one is, hard work. If you're a gamer and you play a difficult game, for example, most recently Zelda, and you want to, finalize the game. So you have many challenges that you face on a daily basis. And gamers typically, they want to go to the final level, or they want to go to the final boss. So you need to, work day in and day out. And sometimes it's actually work to really get to the final level. And you also need to think strategically. Sometimes it's gaming is not all about shooting games. There are strategic games, how to get from A to B to C, and then close off the game. So strategic thinking is also an important factor that I would mention. And finally, gamers in gaming jobs, especially, they have big passion. What I see here with my colleagues, that's just the passion aspect that. I mean, as a consultant formerly, I've seen many industries, many people from different workforces. I've never seen as much passion as gamers are actually having when they work for a gaming company. But of course, that only or mostly holds true for gaming companies. Those are a few traits that I would come to my mind as we speak.
So am I under the presumption that the people that you've hired into your company are from, have a gaming background?
I would say everybody in our company has a gaming. There's not even one person that doesn't have a gaming background. We had a few examples in the past. When we were a younger company, we didn't have a brand yet. We were fighting for talent. We hired a few colleagues that were not gamers. For example, in a marketing department. If you run marketing for a gaming company, of course, you should know what games you talk about. If you do an Instagram post or you write a content piece or whatever it is. And if you don't know the game, the audience will notice. So we don't, right now, we are not hiring, and it also wouldn't make sense to hire colleagues that are not gaming, especially because it somewhat, I would say, destroys a little bit the culture. Everybody talks about gaming, be it during lunch breaks or, on the hallway at the coffee machine. I mean, sometimes we even get some jokes from the colleagues when Leopold, my co-founder, and I are playing against the teammates and always losing. They're like, you guys are not gamers, but we're just a bit older and a bit slower on, typing on the mouse or playing the PlayStation. So yes, all of our colleagues are gamers.
Nice. And how are you I'm just curious, actually, how are you actually drawing them away from working from a direct gaming studio to actually now working for, an agency or even just a company that's focusing on content? Because again, that's still quite a big change from them working from a direct gaming company to what you guys do. And I know what your guys doing is exciting, but still, how do you convince them?
Good question. But it also depends a little bit on the background of the colleagues. So we have most of our colleagues are journalists. So a publisher most likely rather has designers, they have developers, they have storytelling people, but not typical journalists. So they have most likely a social media team. So social media colleagues from EarlyGame most likely would also work at a publisher. But the journalists that we have here, that they are interested in journalism, in producing good content, and therefore they would, I believe, rather apply at EarlyGame than, let's say, Riot or EA, because there's just less journalistic work to do. That would be my assumption. And in the end, it's also about, if we have people applying from Munich, they want to stay in Munich, and some publishers are maybe in Asia or wherever. So it also wouldn't make sense. And in the end, team atmosphere also plays a role. Most of our colleagues that we have, not only on a junior level, but also on a mid level, have done an internship beforehand, and they learned lots about EarlyGame, our culture, our vision here. And I don't know any person at EarlyGame that got a job offer after the internship that, declined a job offer. I guess it's also somewhat of our culture that gets into the final decision-making process of the colleagues.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's a really, really good story there. And just to finalize it and wrap up this podcast, because we've already got to nearly 30 minutes, which has gone so quick. Is there anything that you wanted to add or maybe kind of share some key insights around hiring gaming talent, mergers and acquisitions in the gaming industry, or even mergers and acquisitions, within publications and content that you'd like our listeners to hear about?
I've spoken so much, so not that spontaneous on any other topics, but of course we're always happy to, help anyone, be it endemic or non-endemic brands, to, prosper in the gaming industry, to, get just some advice. We're always happy to help companies on a global scale. Yeah, we got colleagues around the globe, so wherever the listeners are listening to your podcast, to please feel free to reach out to us. And we're always also happy to, get better on a daily basis. So if there's anything that didn't make sense, what I was saying, please correct me, and I'm happy to learn. Yeah.
And I presume they can probably reach out to you on LinkedIn directly, or even just through their website, and communicate with you on those channels.
Exactly. So LinkedIn always works. And if you want to learn more about EarlyGame, we just recently created our corporate website called earlygamegroup.com. Feel free to reach out and check out what we do.
Great. And you're going to Gamescom, aren't you? So if anyone's going to Gamescom, maybe they can perhaps meet you there as well. If you're not attending too many parties, that is.
Yeah, our own party got cancelled with our partner, unfortunately. But yeah, we're going as a team. 5 or 6 colleagues are going from I believe it is Tuesday until Friday. So hopefully also see you there as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, thank you so much for your time, Fabian. Thank you for jumping on this podcast episode today, and for sharing your insights around hiring in the gaming industry, mergers and acquisitions, and also just sharing some great things about what you're doing at your company in terms of growth and also the culture. So again, appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much for your time.
All right. Thank you.